Okay, good morning everybody. We start this wonderful session with different topics regarding sustainable development and private and public partnership. Since the first author is not here, we start with Dr. Adil Dafa'Alla. He is from Airbus UK, and his paper about towards modeling Diaspora role as international agents for development. Please introduce yourself and then start your presentation. Dr. Adil, you are welcome.
Thank you very much, Professor Elsadig, and good morning, everybody. And my name is Adil Dafa'Alla. I work for Airbus UK, although my talk today is nothing to do with engineering. It's actually, I'm going to talk about different partnership, including the diaspora community and their role as international agents for development. I'm not sure if the presentation is up yet. Yeah, it's ready. I can't see it here. But, okay, please, Selma. And okay, it's ready. Just click. Where is the pointer? It's near you. No, just your right, yes. Sorry, okay. So I would like to start with actually quoting the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, where they have actually said that poor and struggling countries will need national development strategies that respond to global macroeconomic trends to ensure that they thrive in a global economy. And in my view, this is where the role of diaspora comes into play. And just talking about diaspora, or however you pronounce it, because it's pronounced differently in different countries and different parts of the world. So we can say that they have many impacts. They are a source of foreign direct investment, market opportunities and development, technology transfer, philanthropy, tourism, political contributions, and flow of knowledge. But also, and more importantly, in my view, is new attitudes and cultural influences. However, this emphasizes the potential role of diaspora in development, hence poverty reduction in their own countries of origin, provided their huge resources and impact can be utilized intelligently and effectively. But before going deep into the presentation, what are these diaspora? How do we have any facts and figures about them? Globally, and this is statistics of 2015, the number of migrants population reached 244 million. This is a huge population relative to any big country in the world today. And this actually represents more than 40% increase between 210 and 215. And this is an important point. The median age is 39 years of age. This is a prime productive age. Their contribution to the world had been estimated by the North American Development Integration Institute in California to be around $7.1 trillion. This is effectively the sixth biggest or largest economy in the world, which is really significant. And about 2/3 of them live in about 20 countries around the world. And this includes the majority of migrants, of them actually live in the richest countries in the world and even in the G7 countries. Between 2000 and 2015, the positive net migration contributed to 42% of the population growth in Northern America and about 32% in Oceania. Actually, 1/5 of the whole migrant groups reside just in the USA. But if we take it by continent, 76 million of them resides in Europe, 75 million in Asia, 54 million in North America, 47 million of them are in the USA, 21 million in Africa, 9 million in Latin America and the Caribbean, 8 billion in Oceania. But the Gulf country, the Gulf region in particular is very interesting because if you take the Gulf region, 84% of the population in UAE are actually foreign born. This is a huge sort of percentage. Then followed by Qatar, about 74%, Kuwait and Bahrain. Saudi Arabia is about a third of the population. There are actually 10 million foreigners in Saudi Arabia, which is the fourth largest number of migrants after USA, Germany, and the Russian Federation. But where do they come from? Actually, about 2/3 of them, 64% originally, come from middle-income countries, not poor countries. And the rise or increase in the number of migrants from this income group is increasing larger than any other income group. 1/4 of them originated from Europe, and 43% of them from Asia. Interesting result is that some of them come from the richest countries in the world. For example, migrants from France live in more countries than any other nation in the world. Whereas migrants from Africa are only 14% of the migration population. So this shows us that actually migration is not poverty-driven. There are other reasons for that. Because generally the poorest countries, represent a minority. So what does this tell us? In fact, there is no very accurate statistics for what I'm saying here, but we can safely say that a significant portion of migrants are well-educated, skilled workers and professionals in their prime productive working age, seeking to fulfill personal or professional ambitions that they could not fulfill in their own countries of birth due to developmental, social, or political reasons. In fact, the economists have made a very nice comment about the migrants' network are rare, bright spark in the world economy and encourage, richest countries to welcome them. That is because they add value. They have the skill and expertise to apply. The idea is to drive innovation, and they contribute, directly to the economy. The United Nations has actually recognized their role by saying that they are positive contribution for inclusive growth and sustainable development, and highlighted the fact that the international migrants is a multi-dimensional reality of major relevance to the development of countries of origin, transit, and destination. So in terms of their contribution to the global economy is that despite these major sort of contributions, it has been actually mainly revolved around the pivotal point of aid and poverty reduction and directed towards their countries of origin. And this is where I have some problem with, because this confines the role of diaspora to firefighting economic crises in their countries of origin. And this means that, or makes the main objective of their contribution is politically rather than economically driven. It's also unidirectional in the sense that it shows the contribution of diaspora towards their countries of origin, but not towards the countries of residence as well. Confining the contribution of the diaspora in this unidirectional role ignores the legitimate interests and ambitions of the diaspora themselves and risk exploiting them for the political and economic aims of the countries of origin and or host countries. And this is obviously not satisfactory from their own perspective. And more importantly, it does not exploit the full potential of the diaspora. So what are we going to do? With a population of 244 million, an economic value of $7.1 trillion, the weight and the real weight of the diaspora should really reflect their true potential as agents for development, and in fact, international agents for development, because they are making a natural link between their countries of origin and residence. Hence, they are well situated or suited to play an active and unique role as international agents for development in both countries of origin and countries of residence. So what we are advocating in this paper, where, by the way, I should acknowledge the contribution of my colleague Al-Mu'izz Hussein, who was planning to be here but couldn't make it to this paper. So we are advocating is a new perspective that satisfies the ambitions of the diaspora, requirements of host countries, and needs of countries of origin. However, this aim can be achieved by considering a three-way private-public partnership of equals between the diasporas themselves, on one hand, their countries of origin, and their countries of residence. And this is what's unique about this PPP, which we have been hearing about all this morning and the last few days, actually, but there is no three-way PPP like this between the diaspora as public, as private sector, and then both the countries. So it's countries of origin and countries of residence.
We need to consider the reasons why people are leaving. One of the reasons why people are leaving, according to the push factors, it's not only just about economic factors, but there are political factors, which is what I want to touch on. I want to touch on the conflicts that's happening across Africa, from Congo, Sudan, Somalia, and some parts of northern Nigeria. A lot of the people there, you find out that when these wars, conflicts, when they take place, they are not able to leave their country, so they have to be absorbed by other neighboring countries. And this leads to poverty, because one of the things we find out is that you'd have to rely on private individuals to fund some of these initiatives. One of them includes provision of food, provision of education. Now we talk of getting vaccinations for others who may have suffered diseases. And what is the goal for us? Now, according to the Internal Displacement Monitoring Scheme, there are about 3.5 million new displacements in Africa in 2016 alone, of which 2.6 million were caused by conflict and violence. These conditions create poverty and lack of access to education for those affected, which has had a ripple effect on economic stability and growth. The effects of this brain drain are perhaps most prominent in the field of medical services, resulting in devastating impacts on the struggle to achieve health and fight disease and malnutrition when it's caused by displacement. Can remittances aid in sustainable development? One way in which international migration has been helpful to African economic growth is through remittances. The money sent home to family members, just like I mentioned earlier on, by departed workers. Remittance increases household consumption and provide insurance against food shortages and natural disasters. Remittance from African migrants comprise 6% of worldwide remittances. In 2015, with a total of money transfers to home regions, there were about 35.2 billion US dollars that were sent home, and this is bound to continue to triple. Notwithstanding the Brexit, we're not sure exactly what is going to happen with Brexit. Yeah, we're not sure exactly what's going to happen with Brexit, but we know that the value of this is going to increase. But from the last statistics, it's had minimal impact because people were still sending money home. Now, if the private individuals are sending money home, we want to find out what the public sector is doing concerning this. And that's why it's important to have a collaborative initiative. Now, I'm moving on very fast because I'm aware of the time. Now, according to an estimate of UNO, I understand that 244 million international migrants have since been displaced, including 21.3 million refugees and 40.8 million internally displaced persons. Now, why should the private and public sector work together? Members of the diaspora are able to send migrants home with the spate of developed nations closing their doors on migrants. We find out that there are migrants that have become illegal immigrants, they become overstayers, and migrants have been criminalized. There are people that have travel to some of these developed nations, they get detained, and while they are detained, their human rights get violated, they get deported. The public sector back home don't have any initiatives to support those that are, returning back home, which is one of the things that needs to be, looked at. We find out that there are more private sectors that are supporting those that are returning back from either as a forced migrant, or the ones that are willingly deported either by government initiatives or they have exhausted their rights. Now, based on the discussion of international dialogues on migration held in 2016, 4 main areas can be identified as priority in coming years. Structured programs about the benefits of migrants and refugees should be included in the Sustainable Development Goals. Push and pull factors mitigated where poverty is reduced and conflict is managed. Awareness on the role that migrants and migration can play in accelerating efforts. And in conclusion, we need to be able to formulate policies using evidence as a whole of government approach, and then engage with partners to address migration-related issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for your very good presentation. We move to the third speaker, promotion of private sector participation in India port. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Professor. Namaste. I'm Shraddha Sathe Padale. I'm from India, and I'm going to present to you my paper on how to promote private sector participation in Indian ports. I know a lot of you are. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. I know a lot of you are not very much aware of the Indian maritime sector, so let me just give you a small brief on that. Yeah. India has a maritime history of over 5,000 years, and we started our trade in maritime sector from a very small port in India, Luthal, and this supported our internal trade, and later on we grew to support the international trade by having exports of spices, then silk and many commodities. And today you can see that India is well connected. If you see, I've given you a pictorial view of India, how geographically it is located, and it has been blessed with the coastline of 7,500 kilometers surrounded by Indian Ocean, Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, and we've been able to connect to the international trade all over the continent. So, Okay. We are able to, like I said, we have been able to connect to the international trade over the continents. In India, we are handling 95% of the trade by volume and 70% by value. My presentation is basically going to focus on how this the trade has changed the nature of business. Like earlier, we used to do a lot of bulk cargoes. Now I'm moving to containerization. How did I move to containerization? Let me give you a very small example. I'm a fashion designer. I have a fashion show in Milan, and I want to send across my 10,000 designs at Milan to my models. How do I do it? I don't want to pack my clothes in the box and destroy my design. How do I do it? Who is going to cater to this requirement? I came up with an idea. The industry has came up with an idea of containerization. I stack all my clothes on the hangers, I rail it into the containers, and I ship that container to the location where I'm going to flash my designs. So this is how I ship my designs of 10,000 clothes to Milan, and there it is in time where the models will display my designs in Milan. So this is how the change has come from shipping through bulk into containerization, more systematic way. You have cargoes, various kinds of customer requirements which can be containerized, and this is how the shipping has evolved. So to cater to this trade, it is very important that we get the expertise in this sector. And how do I get it? Let me just tell you, this is the flow of my presentation. These are the 12 major ports which are there in India, and 185 minor ports which are catering to the cargo and passenger services. The basic major port or the gateway port for India is Jawaharlal Nehru Port, which is based, if you see, there is in the diagram, there is a Nhava Sheva, which I have mentioned in the diagram. This port handles lot of cargo traffic which has been connected through hinterlands and various states of India. If you see, overall, in 1617, we handle a cargo traffic of 647 million tons of cargo. And this is almost a 6.79% growth that we have registered during that year. And it is increasing. So we need to have the current facilities that we have, we need to enhance them so that this cargo traffic, which is ever increasing, is catered to. Like I said, there is Jawaharlal Nehru Port, which is there in India. This has only got 3 terminals. So at a time, I can handle 3 ships, 3 container ships. So how do I cater to this ever-increasing growth, the cargo traffic that is coming to the Indian ports? So I need an investment. I need a partner. And how do I get the partner? Private sector has been invited because the public sector is not, or there is a need for efficient and cost-effective services, change in cargo handling technologies. We need to respond to that. There are lots of requirements, like I gave you just an example of the Milan fashion show, how there are users which have different requirements and how do I suit it. So I need to have those changes through private investment. I can call for that. There is a need for investment in expanding the existing capacity which is there in India, and also to have labor discipline which may affect the entire working at the port sector. What are the initiatives that have been taken? I have kept my presentation very simple so that every one of you can understand it rather than making it more complicated. So the thing is, there are many initiatives which Government of India has taken to call for private sector participation. The first is leasing out the existing port assets. For this, I have a very successful example for you. At JNPT Port, that is Jawaharlal Nehru Port, we have one of the terminals which is being handled completely by the private sector. Most of you must be knowing the name of Maersk line, and it has been handled by that. And this terminal is named as Gateway Terminal, and they have brought in a lot of innovative changes in that terminal to handle the growing cargo traffic. That is one of the examples which has been live, and it is working very well and helping to handle this ever-increasing growth in traffic. Then we have various measures like initiatives where public sector has called for participation through construction and creation of additional assets. In this case, I have a beautiful example for you. Like I showed you a pictorial view of JNPT where we have only 3 ports which are handling 3 ships at a time. To also support it or to increase the capacity of that port, we have come up with 4th terminal. And that terminal is going to be built or is built by Port of Singapore, and that's going to also cater to the ever-increasing traffic at Indian ports. Then there is other initiatives for construction and operations of bulk, break bulk, multi-purpose and specialized cargo berths. Then as port, let me tell you that I just skipped behind one slide, one of the slides, where I have given a pictorial view of how ports are connected. Port is just not an infrastructure where it just handles or loads cargo or unloads cargo. It is very well connected to the road facilities, the railway facilities, the other facilities, factories. So it is in all is connected to every aspect of the industry. So as the port will grow, it will also lead to growth of these sectors. So it's a port-led development that is looked into when we call for private sector participation. And this will not only improve our infrastructure, that will also provide better facilities for handling this kind of cargo traffic. Then I come to warehousing, container freight station and storage facilities, which are very much required at the port sector to handle the cargo. Then there is craneage and handling equipments. There are huge equipments which are utilized in the shipping sector to handle the cargo. So that kind of facilities can be given to the private sectors, which will bring in new technologies and better, faster clearances of cargo at ports. Then there is setting up of captive power plants, dry docking and ship repair facilities. When I talk about dry docking, let me give you a very simple example. You have your car. In order to maintain your car, what do? You send it to your station to repair it, to make it better so that it can be utilized. So in same way, a ship also needs to be maintained. And that is how I do it, through dry docking facilities. If those facilities are being provided through the private sector, and if there is a participation in that, we can definitely give impetus to and opportunities to various partners in the industry. It will also help in spurring the job opportunities, expand capacities, etc. I've been told to rush, so these are some of the initiatives that has been taken by Government of India. Let me brief you about one of the major ongoing initiative of India, that is Sagarmala program. It is $120 billion program, and it not only focuses on development of 6 mega ports, but also modernization of ports, development of more than 14 coastal economic zones, 29 coastal economic units. So why I'm talking about coastal? the business is just not about major ports. You need to have and need to tap the internal trade, which is very, very important. So this coastal development is also very much important when you talk about the development initiatives. There are almost 415 projects which have been identified under this program, and which will lead to port-led development in this sector. So this is, when I talk about this, I'm also like to bring to your notice that it also complies with one of the SDG goals of goal number 17, where this development of ports will result in better capacity building, growth in trade, better employment opportunities, and better introduction to better technologies. So this is the brief of entire program. Okay, with every program there is a... Okay, there is, okay. These are some of the recommendations that I have suggested for inviting private sector partnership, like reformations, then converting from service ports to landlord ports, where you give private sectors to handle the service, whatever the commercial requirements or operational requirements, and you take over only the port facilities. Then there is free port status given to the coastal minor ports, so that the trade is also enhanced. So we cut down the cost which is involved, and we can call for private sector participation in this. There is this ro-ro facility, which is for the vehicles, which is roll-on and roll-off facility, which private sector participants can bring. Like I have identified, there is Mumbai port, who is handling a lot of vehicles. So these facilities can be developed in better way and can act as a boost to our economy. Then there is cruise terminals, which can be developed, which is not very dominant in Indian sector, so that can be developed with the help of private sector, and other initiatives that I've recommended. I thank you. I'm not going in detail because the time is very short, but anybody of you have any points to discuss can meet me later on.
Okay,
thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed. The next speaker title is Development and Integration Between Public and Private Entrepreneurship on Globalization. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning. Sound is okay?
Yes, it's
yeah, okay. First of all, sorry for my last day entry, and because I was actually not able to come last 3 days. So my apologies. However, I want to give a big thanks to Petru and Professor Alam, who is actually making this summit or conferences happen, and I'm really glad to be here, and thanks for everybody. And I'm very happy to see my few old friends who are actually meeting me a few years ago as well. So thank you. And now, obviously, if you can look at it, my presentation, last, I think, few days, you all are talking about the private-public partnership, but I'm little bit slightly talking a bit difference about private-public partnership. Instead of partnership, I'm talking about the entrepreneurship. As a by-professional, I am actually educator for entrepreneurship, as obviously as a teacher or as a associate professor. By naturally, we are doing a lot of work in developing countries, especially I'm giving the example of, oh, sorry, it's coming down, or, oh, sorry. Coming down from those 4 important things, as you see in the screen, the development, integration, public and private entrepreneurship, and globalization. If we put actually all together, these are all bullet point is most important at the moment, and which is actually coming to the agenda of 2013, this conference agenda as well, how we can develop more private and public entrepreneurship engagement. What we mean here, like, if you look at the development, we are talking every day, every time development, but what is actually consequences and what we can actually see from this development, especially to understand the private and public sector. In terms of integration, we want to see the more interact between private and public sector. I'm sure in this conference, we have many countries representative, many universities representative, we all are actually talking about the integration. But this integration we mean actually like as a marriage, so then people can help each other, especially the government organization should encourage private sector to more motivated, more sales from their own country to encourage the economy in the same time. And then we are talking the globalization. If we think about the globalization, I think we are all a bit scary, a bit worried what will be happening next day morning. As you said, then every day we see the new things, especially in nowadays, the land and the opportunity is actually unblocked. Everybody can do anything they want because it is actually happening, and that is actually just globalization. Because under the globalization, any small business, any countries can do whatever they want, and that is the reason actually we are trying to understand this sustainability word, that how we can how we can develop this integration, especially for the entrepreneur to make the opportunity to sell the product in the rest of the world or global market. So in that case, if you look, obviously the bottom of the 3 point, what I was talking about here, the opportunity is actually making some kind of coherent to understand how the development will be giving the potential impact on the local economics. Especially we are going to giving a kind of example, especially to understand how this thing happening in the different country level. I'm giving one example of like, obviously if I can give my example of advisory level, I'm working with the Oman and Turkey, Kazakhstan and Bangladesh. I just come back from last week in Kazakhstan. We're working with the university integration with the government and public sector, especially government public sector, how they can introduce to the entrepreneur in the private sector. So there was one example of the Kazakhstan they are doing, is called Benim Arman. I think one of my colleagues is here. I was actually the guest speaker from the government level to understand how the government could support the private sector, especially for the entrepreneur to make more product, more services to the economy. So this is the last point. If you can see the last one, obviously, way of support that developing countries, especially we are talking about the developing country, there is a lot of opportunity, but I think government should get more open mind policy to support the entrepreneur to make the sustainability to their business, to make it more happening. And obviously, this is the thing, we're not going to read it as understanding of the Joan Sambuya, which is actually the ILO director. They are actually talking of the traditional understanding about the entrepreneurship and opportunity, but we want to see a little bit difference now. If you look at the globalization and under digital world, the people are changed. People have a mind map is changed, people change, entrepreneurs change their mind, and they can do business from their bedroom. But if you look at the 50, 30 years or 100 years ago, it was difficult. So we need to be actually accommodate our entrepreneurs to understand the government policy and rule and regulation to how they can support the local entrepreneur or entrepreneurship process to be more creative, more understandable in the global market. So based on this thing, what we are proposing, or why we need to be actually bring it, I'll bring this all. To understand this marriage, or actually private-public entrepreneurship, it's creating more employees, creating more value for the business, more innovation and responsibility by the entrepreneurship, so then enterprise can develop a lot of things for their own initiative and get support from the government. Then obviously to make more jobs creation, especially to demand and market in the consumer market, and the tech business, especially to understand what is the ethical business in this, especially a small business should be carrying. And I'm sure you look at this, a lot of big data going on, especially last couple of weeks, I think Cambridge University, they are trying to sort it out with the data entry for the Facebook, especially some chaotic at the problem at the moment. So we have to think about the government should initiate those information, especially for SMEs, especially for small businesses, so that relation will be create more sustainable and can be done proper way. So the question is actually come to here, how can government actually helping or can support? I'm sure in many countries here we cannot, or I cannot talk actually every country's representation, but I do believe most of the educators here then can see then how government should support and how government or public sector could develop some relation with the private sector, especially as small businesses, where the all entrepreneur actually born. So by born, we have to support them. How we support, I think the message goes to all educator, especially universities lecturer or educator, who can support linkage those messages to the government level and the public level as well. Coming back to this supportive environment, obviously, as I mentioned, I'm working with these 4 countries, as I mentioned earlier, and supporting heavily those things through the university, obviously, to understand how government could support, how government could give some kind of supporting tools and techniques for the local entrepreneurs, and also make the positive citizens in their countries, so that everybody can share their value. In contents of relationship with this public and private sector, we can see many countries, especially as I mentioned, I'm talking really Kazakhstan, I'm working heavily with Kazakhstan. We are trying to understand many young people to be joined as an entrepreneur, so they can creating a lot of jobs, they can creating a lot of human resource, financial environment, and making more open job or open opportunity for their country, and make the brand for their land and the opportunity for other peoples in the same time. And in that case, you can see this model, obviously, actually if we can see it, I'm sure everybody knows those things, but my most interesting at the moment, I'm working with actually the first point, which is the people with underused talent. And I can see just one of the example, like a couple of weeks or couple of months ago, there was a Saudi prince come to UK and writing a lot of interaction with the government and find out just how can they develop more businesses. So this is, I think, one of the useful messages from the Central Middle East or Saudi country, and which is actually we are looking for the other country as well, especially Oman. I'm talking about obviously something in Kazakhstan and Turkey, how we can make more local entrepreneur and more unused talent, especially all of small businesses, actually they have a talent. But I think public sector, when those people goes to the public offices, especially even some building, they cannot enter because either they have a low educated education or low educated person. Therefore, they don't actually allowed by the government office or government officers. So we want to see this integration should be divorced and make it more interact between the public and private sector. So my message is here for the obviously United Nations, and also this conference should be creating more integration without any block, without any disturbance. So the small business and uneducated business owner can come to the building, come to the offices, and they can get their need what they want. And finally, what we are saying, obviously, as we mentioned here, we are trying to understand the more international relation or international interaction. In this relation, private-public entrepreneurship, I think it will be open door policy for many countries to sell the product in the global market. And one of the example, I did a lot of work in Bangladesh as well. Just for last 5 years, or 5 years ago, a lot of small businesses, especially, they cannot sell the product in abroad. Now this project is actually open. People, a lot of small business can sell their product without any hesitation, without any government intervention. So this is actually something, example, we are looking for many countries, which will be actually helping 2030's development agenda for this conference and also the United Nations. And in terms of especially the domestic development for more entrepreneur, more economic development in the country, and that will be helping our global poverty decrease. And I hope this will be actually helping all educators in the rest of the world to develop some integration between public and private sector, which will be creating value for all of us. Thank you very much. And over to you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for your good presentation. The last speaker, please introduce yourself and your title, because your title is not here.
Dear organizers and participants of the 16th International Annual Conference and the 5th Diaspora International Conference, let me introduce myself and my presentation. My name is Gulnash Askhat. I'm from Kazakhstan. I'm a doctorate student at Kazakh Ablai University of International Relations and World Languages. Before starting my presentation, I'd like to express my gratitude to Inspector Petru Dimitru of the Joint Inspection Unit of the United Nations System, and my special thanks to Ahmed, the President of World Association for Sustainable Development, and other organizers for giving us such an amazing opportunity to witness this fruitful event. So as I told, I'm a doctorate student. My doctorate thesis is related to diaspora studies. Today's my topic is going to be about diaspora's role in the system of international relations, and mainly I am going to talk about the role of diasporas in the political system of states, as well as I'm going to identify the features and the specifics of formation of mechanisms of interaction of state bodies with diaspora at present stage. As you see, on the agenda, I am going to talk diasporas as an actor in modern world politics and the role and the importance of diaspora in the political life of the state. So, changes in the international relations system have followed each other throughout the history. These changes increase the uncertainty of system, causing the difficulty to actors determine their position. Traditional bilateral and multilateral relations are complemented by new relationships between states. On this basis, there are new actors in international relations. Their number is striking for diversity, for its diversity, and their role is constantly and steadily growing in the world. Actors are any authority, any organization, any group, or even individual which play a role that is attributable in international relations. They have powerful economic, political, or social power and are able to influence at a national and sometimes international level. Diaspora is just one of the important and understudied actors in present economic, political, and cultural relations, and occupies its own niche in the political life of various countries. As you know, they have they have influenced international politics since ancient times, and they continue to do so today. But now, the world interest in them as a socio-political and ethno-cultural phenomenon is extremely increased against the background of globalization. In the context of economic and political globalization, migration processes have begun to play a significant role in the formation of modern system of international relations. In these connections, a growing role and the influence of diaspora is an extremely important phenomenon in the international arena. States can use the results of diaspora to realize their national interests, for example, in establishing links with foreign partners. In this case, diaspora provides an economic, cultural, and linguistic presence. Diasporans play an influential role in the foreign policy, market entry, decision-making process, often encouraging their employers at least to investigate the possibility of investing in the diasporan's country of origin, and generates new jobs and increased income. There are some trends that indicate the growing role of diasporas. Diasporas build networks which overcome various challenges that result in positive effects, economic effects in the homeland, taking measures to improve relations between homeland and the country of residence. In bilateral interstate relations, the diaspora acts as a liaison. The policy of the state of residence in relation to the diaspora can influence foreign policy decisions, and it is also an indicator of the attitude towards the homeland of diaspora. The world is rapidly moving forward, and such global problems as population aging, depletion of natural resources, environmental threats, national conflicts, illegal migration, and other challenges. These are slowing progress in sustainable development and ensuring decent living conditions for people. To enter the path of sustainable development for each country, it's necessary to focus on system-wide principles, implement certain imperatives, and observe the criteria that ensure the harmonious development of the economy, social sphere, and the environment in their interconnection. Migration processes in the world have a tendency to a permanent increase. More and more people are involved in them. Today, diaspora groups and individuals are being recognized as major actors who can use their influence and the financial resources to contribute to local development in their homelands. They have a unique role in international relations because they find themselves in between two countries, sharing two cultures, having an emotional investment in two nations, and preserving social and connections in two societies. I'd like, in my conclusion, I'd like to say that understanding this fact is necessary in general to all countries, but especially those who today tend to occupy a leading place in the modern world politics and should be seen as a tool for promoting national interest in improving the foreign country's policy image. In this regard, the diaspora gains more voice and recognition they have begun demanding in the home country political processes as well as in the process of host country. Dear participants, some of you left your homeland for some reasons. You all have powerful economic, political, and social power and are able to influence at a national and international level, as I said before. You are building bridges between societies and creating transnational communities of mutual development benefit to the host and origin country. As for the states, international organizations, and the private sectors, they can engage diasporas for development through appropriate communication, partnership policies, and actions at home and abroad that diasporas could share and transfer their resources without any block, as Dr. I don't remember your name. Sathe, yeah. So let's just work together. We are one family. Let's do everything best for our life, for our future generation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed. We will speak the same language and then we contribute to the host countries and our home also. Thank you very much indeed for your good presentation. Without any delay, I open the floor for questions. Anybody who would like to ask any question? Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You see, I have many questions. I think it's being captured here by people like Petru at the JIU, but I appreciate the opportunity. I'm particularly interested in the subjects covered under diaspora and the significance of the diaspora in the world economics as well as in addressing sustainable development. So thank you very much to the presenters. The model presented by Dr. Dafa'Alla, it's just so significant, and it's a shame we didn't get the total elements of it, but I have a couple of questions for that. In looking at, and it's just such outstanding information, you know, covering global migration, which we never think about that, you know, and the diaspora, we always think of the diaspora leaving the south for the north. If we look at the diaspora that are migrants to the south primarily, and a lot of them being European. My question is, what is the level of expertise of that group, number one, if that you covered or not? And secondly, does this include the staff of bilateral, multilateral organizations working in the South. Perhaps you could address that. The diaspora in Africa, so very significant, and very quickly, a question about the strategy. What's the strategy for actually engaging that diaspora? There seems to be a suggestion from Olivia, Joseph-Aluko, of the public and sector and the diaspora coming together. But my question is, what's the confidence level of the diaspora actually working with the public sector? Is there a paradigm that might be coming from, also from Dafa'Alla, that actually speaks to, the nature of how this public engagement would be with the diaspora in ways that make it strategic? Or should we be talking much more about creating a diaspora and its own venture capital group? I'm not sure what is the strategy for a maximum utilization of the diaspora. And very quickly, on the diaspora and politics, I want to offer the case of my country, the Gambia. And I didn't get a lot from your presentation on that political aspect for the role of the diaspora. But I can say that in the Gambia, for example, where there was a problem with the government, the diaspora that had a voice being outside the country was the one that could actually bring about a lot of awareness of the political situation. They had the nerve to actually counter the government, and they played a key role. And I think if we're talking about politics and issues of governance, I think your thesis could actually look at those particular dimensions of the role of the diaspora. And it brings about another point made by Dr. Alla, which is how the diaspora gets used. Because after the politics, then all the politicians sort of went back to scaling and benefiting, or it was like looty of where they placed themselves. And the diaspora got side-shifted rather than developing a strategy for use of the diaspora. Although I know there's a group that's trying to find out who this diaspora is. But those are a set of questions and comments, and perhaps you can react to it as you see fit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, indeed, Ms. Inspector, for your good question and comments. Dr. Adil, please.
Thank you very much for these questions. I wish I had time during my presentation, actually, because some of the points which I missed actually address what you are asking, and they are very, very essential. I mean, if I start with the point of how to maximize, the use of diaspora, I had a proposal of actually diaspora should really organize themselves in sort of organizations, associations, call them whatever you, and these associations or organizations should work in a way similar to, trade unions in mature democracies, for example, or even the royal colleges, in the UK, so such that they can actually, defend and, stand for the rights of diaspora in their countries and in the world, and also they should set the standard and monitor the conduct of diasporas themselves. So it is not just one way. Diasporas themselves need to be, conduct their business in a particular way. And also an important point, which I couldn't say, is that, the role of diaspora need to be recognized officially by both the countries of origin and countries of residence for the model I advocated, to work. And that recognition is not just words, but it should really be included in the statute books of both countries. That is important for three reasons. The diaspora themselves would feel, protected and assured, particularly if you look at their contribution in third world or other, sort of developing countries, particularly in our continent, Africa. And that is also important for the developing countries to actually sell their investment in developing countries, because, and to sell that to their public. Because, if as American or European citizen, your government wants to invest in a developing country, you are accountable to that. And the third thing is that it will defend the rights of diaspora from actually being abused by their own countries of origin. And most importantly, it will take the diaspora investment from the political arena, particularly in their countries, and try to put it in, so, because, you know, if you are changing governments, you are changing legislation, you're changing everything every day, then there is no sustainability for that. Okay, so, but I think there is a lot we can talk about, but I had to stop here, unfortunately. Sorry.
Okay, before I give the question, do you have any comments? Okay, no comments. Okay, please. I think I give the chance to Salma, then to Dr. Mayada. Salma, please.
Thank you, Professor Elsadig. Again, my question is for Dr. Adil. In your study or in your presentation, you mentioned that you wanted to look at how the diaspora can be agents in agents for development, and I think the key assumption was that the diaspora still maintain ties with their countries of origin. And even after they migrate, they are still interested in what's going on in their countries of origin. My question is, do you have any data or evidence to support that? And is there a means to measure whether the diaspora maintains those ties? Because I know, for example, in Sudan, the Coptic community, they migrate to Australia, to New Zealand, and they integrate completely there, and they have nothing to do with Sudan once they've migrated. So, yeah, my question is, do you have a way to measure that? Thank you.
Yes, actually.
Please briefly, yeah?
Yes, okay. There are examples of both, but I mean, there are very influential and effective examples, particularly, you know, for the diaspora contribution to their countries of origin. For example, I take something which might be close to your heart, the, you know, war in Iraq. You know, the role of diaspora in convincing, you know, the U.S. to invade Iraq and change Saddam Hussein regime. That was very influential. And believe it or not, if you take the case of Croatia, for example, the diaspora paid $4 million for the election campaign, you know, and affected the results there and got the man they want and had been rewarded by that. So yes, there are very strong evidence, you know, in the literature which can actually support that the diaspora wants to support their countries of origin, but more importantly, they are not recognized. And this is why you need official recognition of their role. But my question is, what is the recognition of their role in their country, their host countries as well?
Yeah. Actually, regarding the Coptic community, actually, they are already diaspora in Sudan. They are not the people of Sudan, actually. So they migrated totally, most of them, actually. So I think the problem, they have no connection in Sudan. If they have connection, they will contribute, actually. Because it was massive migration. Okay, Dr. Mayada?
My question is to the Joint Inspection Unit and the United Nations systems and our lovely fellow African woman. Is in the UK, we have been lobbying the United Kingdom government to sponsor the diaspora to go back. The only thing we managed is 5 days working, paid work for the NHS, but nothing outside health, even public health in local government. So would the United Nations sponsor this agenda and start lobbying? Because if it came from the United Nations, it will have more strength compared to just diaspora groups lobbying from inside developed countries.
Thank you very much indeed. Then, Miss and Mr. Inspector, there is a question for you. Give to one of you can give some answer.
A lovely African lady. Thank you for that acknowledgement. We women always like to be lovely. I think you've made a very important point, and I think it's what the panel is also highlighting on, you know, because you call it the public space and how the diaspora actually could gain that recognition. And the issues that you're raising, you know, I guess without a consolidated diaspora group actually engaging the UN system, that doesn't happen. And that's why the point you made about how to get the diaspora to form as a union or as a group to influence some of this becomes quite significant. I would let Inspector Petru come in because he's worked very intimately with the intergovernmental bodies of the UN. So he might have a suggestion, throwing the ball back at him. But I think the UN, and here you have the International Organization of Migration, and that becomes the focal point, actually, that would be in a position to establish these policies, to actually support initiatives of that sort. I pass it over to my colleague. He's not a lovely person, lovely African, but
actually, the question was, what is the role of UN in helping the diaspora and hosting country to contribute to the original country?
I've got the question. Again, not as an inspector, we don't have that kind of competence, but as a former diplomat, I can bring you with some sort of answer. As I mentioned in the introductory remarks, it was for me a revelation how important and how organized is the Sudanese diaspora. So this was a pleasant surprise, and it was basically, apart from pleasant, was a surprise. And I mentioned that with surprise because in the United Nations system we hear very often about the remittances. Remittances as a factor of economic growth, remittances as an important part of GDP in the countries of origin, which is fair enough. It's a good and decent contribution of diaspora to the development of their own country. However, what I noticed was the fact that there is some additional energy in diasporas. It's not just the remittances. As you and your case is exemplary. You are basically a bunch of academics across the world, and what you do actually, you try by your work to help the development of your country. And I think I'm afraid that from that perspective, there is not too much done in the United Nations system, although I recognize, and it was due to the information I've got from Alam, UNESCO has some sort of recognition of the role of diaspora, but rather from the cultural aspect as far as I could notice. But I have to say that I'm ignorant if there is any other agency doing more. I've never heard myself in my 25 years as a diplomat. So definitely this is an area to be explored, in particular in view of this new holistic approach of the 2030 agenda.
Thank you very much. Actually, Prof. Alam is the right person to tell us about this. Prof. Alam actually is the right person to tell us about this because he was the one introduced the Diaspora conference a few years back ago. And I request from the UN to give the fund to help those who are not able to attend. Prof. Alam, please.
Thank you very much. I'm not abusing my role here, but I think it's very important because there are very important questions here, and also because this conference, the Diaspora conference, is already integrated in the whole conference, so it should get them. I will make it very brief. We started this initiative in 2008, and I'm not here to defend the UN, I'm not working for the UN, but the first people responded were UNESCO, and they came, and I remember Dr. Tayyip, he came from France, and he was one of the keynote speakers. He supported the idea. His title was the Director for Science, Technology, and Sustainability in the UNESCO. And the whole idea, just to bring every one of you on board, because this is very important for diaspora and non-diaspora to understand the concept, why we're talking about diaspora. The concept of knowledge and technology transfer is based on transferring knowledge and technology, not necessarily from UK to Sudan or the others. But the argument we made at that time, before 2008, is that very simple. You have someone called Adil. He is a British citizen. He's quite senior in Airbus UK, one of the largest. I'm not promoting you, Adil, I'm just talking. Airbus UK, when I teach my students, and I'm sure all of you, this is one of the largest or the biggest company in the whole world. So you got someone here who is a leading mechanics or engineer there. The argument we made, the same when the UK government wanted to do anything in that industrial policy or anything to do with engineering, it is in the interest of the UK government and all other European countries to talk to Adil first, not other one who has never even been to Africa. Because Adil got the qualification from Manchester Imperial, the same as the other counterpart, citizen from the UK. He got the experience, but he also got the knowledge, not about Sudan, about Africa in general. So we argued scientifically, he could be a better person to advise the UK government than another person. It's not about black and white or anything here, but we said we use the Nelson Mandela famous quote, positive discrimination. And I can give you results. Now our UK government, the parliament, is now writing, and they have a complete report on diaspora. The UK government, the parliament, is now listening to the diaspora. They recognize the importance, not of them as remittance providers, but as the people who can help. And Adil is a British citizen. So we want the European countries, we said to them, to efficiently and more productively help other countries. And now ODI is listening, United Nations is listening. And Petro himself, he came to London, I think in February. UNICEF officially invited us, UNICEF in London, and that's all in video available. And they said they would like to pilot, you guys, the Sudanese, are being very active. We want to pilot you, not as a Sudanese, but as a diaspora, to see how can we work closely with the diaspora, because they're not just looking after Sudan, Nigeria, Senegal, whatever it is, to see how those diaspora can help, not UNICEF. I remember he even corrected me twice. He said to me, Alam, you're not helping UNICEF, you're helping the children of Sudan. And the argument is, we have 2,000 consultants. This Mayada is one of them. She's a public health consultant. The argument is, the UNICEF Sudan country representative, he repeated this twice. He said he believes strongly the only or the best people who cares and can help their countries are the citizens of those countries. So we are not just holding other nationalities' passport, but we are Sudanese. And you can see some people here calling themselves. Professor Abdel Ghadir was sitting in Algeria. He's French for 30 or 40 years, but he's still Algerian. This is the whole idea. So that's the first concept. The second concept, and I'm telling you this is quite important because there's lots of diaspora here, is still the diaspora themselves. They don't understand this basic concept. They see it as more of charity, more of helping their countries by old clothes or political changing regimes and so on. So that's, unfortunately, is the case. And I can tell you, Nigerian, Latin American, I have spoken to Latin American diaspora, and they're still fighting like, we're not in fight with governments. The third mistake, the only way we can go forward with the UN support, in terms of UN can get your word to state, they can get your voice to the whole world in a more better, if you like, approach. But they cannot do anything. What we need to do is to convince ourselves this is about agents for development. And we need to understand the second thing. We need to talk to those governments, no matter how corruptive they are. Because you cannot do anything. As the Secretary General of the United Nations, what is his name, Amun, said, when Zimbabwe was having lots of problems, he said, I cannot transfer a single kilo of aid to Zimbabwe without Mugabe accepting to allow it to go through the airport. So you cannot just enforce things on these countries. So we need to create dialogue with countries. It's not the Sudan, all countries. We need to convince them it is in their interest to listen to the diaspora, whether they are Sudanese or Nigerian. This is number two. Number three, I think the big problem, we are still considering the big problem. If you take Adil, Adil is an engineer full-time at his work. Mayada is a consultant public health for whatever, Liverpool. I'm a full-time lecturer at the university. My dean will not allow me to take a single minute because I'm not working for the government of Sudan or for the United Nations. He would expect me to have a full-time workload teaching, researching, supervising PhD students. Adil is expected to do 100% work for Airbus UK. That's where people need to understand it. They don't want to take it as a community meeting for coffee or tea. So that's where we need to think together, how can we institutionalize this thing? So that means I cannot go to my dean. Let me tell you what my dean said. The first diaspora meeting, Alam, I supported this initiative, and he did. I cannot go to him asking for money because he said to me, I did. I gave you the first kick of this project. People, they expect to be funding. Where is the funding we'll have? We have to discuss it. But diaspora as a community-based project, no, it will fail. We have to find institutions. We have to employ administrators. We have to have institutions with CAO and so on. That's what most diaspora have not done. and that the UN cannot do. Maybe if we make a good case to governments, then maybe then the governments will realize this and they will put money in terms of creating an office with someone called a director. You have people who are working full-time to this support. The last one, just to finish with, there is also a misconception. A Nigerian should help his country, Nigeria, or a Sudanese should help Sudan. I think this is a big mistake. Mayada is a public health consultant. She can help any country in the whole diaspora. She can help Latin American countries, India, Kazakhstan, because there's so much she knows about developing countries. But if it comes to Africa and united down to Sudan, she will be the best. So that's number one. I could easily be helping. I did consulted and helped Zimbabwe through the British Council. We went to India, we went to South Africa, Egypt, many governments, UAE. We can help in terms of how to understand the role of the diaspora. So I think, I know I abused my space, but what I would like to encourage you, if you can take this thinking forward and let us use this event to write a 2-3 pages proposal, and then we can communicate with people like those inspectors and others which we have met, and the British Parliament, and we ask them for advice, not for money. We share with them what we think, how it will work. But unless there is an institution probably accountable to either government, I mean now we are just a university. We are not accountable to the government of Sudan. We are not accountable to any government, not even neither the British government. Although they keep asking us, they keep calling us to come even to provide advice on the diaspora in the parliament, which is great. So as a result, yes, there are results. We've been called to give advice, talk many, many times. Even the last one was to do with terrorism, how the diaspora, they called me and they said they want to understand why some of the diaspora, particular nations, they commit terrorism. And I think this is a good thing because now they want to take it from someone who understands the diaspora. So I will stop here, but I think please take this forward and come back with ideas, not just with your country, but other countries. Because these projects need funding, but I don't have any idea to go to anyone to say, I need money. Money for what? Unless people come with a concept note, maybe 1-2 pages, and then we can then go and ask for money. I think money we can find it, but if we have a good cause to raise for money, it could be attached to anything. It could be attached to GAU. Maybe the GAU might be convinced, and they can take it. They can maybe, then we support it. But we have to look at it from this dimension. But whether it will help, yes. And just to finish, in the literature, there is one good example, because I've been asked this question. Can you give me academic evidence? It did work. Yes, it did work. And I can give you the example. And the example is the Silicon Valley. When the Koreans used to send their PhD students to the Silicon Valley to do PhD, they did not wait until they finish the PhD in America or in California and go back to Korea to start working for them. While they are in Korea, they send them all the case study from where they work to solve it while they are in Korea before even they finish the PhD. Not like countries in Africa. Most African countries, he's been sent to UK, he finished his PhD, and then he go to UAE, Bahrain, or somewhere, and that's the end of it. They don't even wait for him to finish the PhD. So how the diaspora have helped to transfer knowledge and technology, the case documented in the literature is Korea and in the Silicon Valley, and this is 1998 or something. I'm really sorry, but I think this is quite a good, important point. Thank you very much.
Okay,
no, just in 10 seconds.
Please.
Just I want to compliment. Okay, in 2 seconds. Actually, I can compliment what Professor Alam said by that. The idea of organizing, the diaspora in organizations or association can actually facilitate the talk to UN or to any other thing, because they would have bodies to talk on their behalf, unlike, just asking individuals. Thank you.
Dr. Mayada, please. Yeah, and Miki. The last one is Miki.
Mentorship in terms of, there is, for example, in the UK, there is DFID, a number of organizations who could fund workforce development in developing countries. So how could we tap, I know the United Nations doesn't have, this is not of a budgetary priority for it, but how could you support us to tap into the Gate Foundation, the rest of it, in terms of securing financial resources?
You are looking at me, so I feel like I'm trying to...
You're the boss.
Well, I would say, based on my experience, that with with the universal vision presented by Alam, which is very interesting in the sense that diaspora should not just focus on the country of origin, but in general. I take that as a valid point. But in terms of practical action, I would say that the first contact point with the United Nations is the United Nations team in your country, because in particular UNDP is supposed to be a catalyst for any efforts directed at development of the country. So they might not only know the existing links with or the existing interests by the government, because as one of my compatriots here in the room mentioned, in Romania, for instance, my country of origin, there is a special minister for the relation with the Romanian in diaspora. Of course, that takes the risk of having that either used for political purposes, because, for instance, the diaspora in Romania is represented in the parliament, so there are two or a number of seats that are a sort of allocated for diaspora, and so it's free election for the representative of diaspora. So that has to do with a little politics. On the other hand, in the specific of my country, for instance, most of the activities focus on cultural things and on the rights of minorities living abroad. So the purpose we are describing here is more generous than, so I, again, shortly, the contact point should be the country team, the United Nations country team in the respective country, which includes UNFPA, UNDP, UNICEF, WHO, depends on, but in countries in developing, I think that the UN family is very numerous, and I think this is the starting point, is where the Big Bang can start.
Thank you. Very, very valid tip. Thank you.
Okay, please.
Dear participants, can I kindly ask you to take part in my research, which I am going to do online, and to answer some questionnaires. And if it is not difficult for you to propose some suggestions concerning the policy, diaspora policy, is the influence of diaspora policy on the international relations? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Miki, please, you want to ask question? Mr. Miki. Yeah, okay. So I think we have enough time and good discussion. Anybody? I don't want to go beyond the wish of anybody, please. No question, then we conclude the session. Thank you very much for everybody who presented here and comment. Can you please come to the stage?
So please remember, if we all help and do a little bit, it will make a big difference.